Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. Hello, if you are new, my name is Andrea Johnson, Reiki Master, Teacher, and Practitioner, Energy Worker, and Spiritual Lifestyle Content Maker. Hello, if you are new. I've seriously tried to film this intro, I don't know how many times, and I don't really know how to go about it. You guys can tell like this background is different than what my normal coffee talks, and it's because I wanted to share more of a personal story, just because I know it will help a bunch of other women who have gone through this, and maybe you're going through something similar right now. And I really think it could help open people's eyes, help you feel better, less alone. So I'm just gonna dive right into it. A year ago from February, so last month, I experienced a miscarriage, and I wanted to share my experience because I felt like it is kind of wild. I want to share, things that I did to help myself get through it and to heal mentally, emotionally, and physically, spiritually. Things that I did to help repair my relationship with my body because that went to shit. And things that happened to me that I could not freaking explain to you. The spiritual connection that I had was insane, and just the pregnancy itself. I wish that I had known what to expect, and nobody really tells you what to expect with pregnancy when you have, or if you have a miscarriage. It's just a very confusing, scary time. So I wanted to share with you my story, and that's exactly how I'm going to lay it out, is a storyline. So let's just begin. November of 2021 is when basically this whole fiasco started. And it was when, if you know anything about Reiki and Holy Fire, it's a different process than the traditional Usui. And this was a much more intense class. This was a much more intense healing class, obviously, that took place. It was the last class, and this was like a 5-week course, guys. It was intense, and they were 5-hour days, 1 day a week. So after the last class and after the last like attunement or ignition, which is basically like a very, very healing meditation, I had experienced an angel actually come to me during meditation. Yesterday I took pregnancy test, and to my surprise, I'm pregnant. But yeah, kind of shocked, even though I shouldn't be, because like whatever video I put this in, my Holy Fire experience is kind of the message that I got from that, was this was to come, and my Holy Fire, whatever you want to call attunements, initiations, it was the last little bit that pushed out the vibration that was holding me back from getting pregnant, because I hadn't been on birth control for years, and my period was very irregular. And right after Holy Fire, I got my period, a full-length period, just like I would before I had gotten on birth control. And right after I had my first period, I missed my period. So I was like, well, damn, maybe it was a fluke. And so I took a pregnancy test, and here we are. It all added up. All the dates, all the, like, every incident leading up to it, as far as like Holy Fire, and then the timing when I started my period and ovulating. I was back in Sedalia, like doing Reiki sessions pretty much like 8 hours that day, on the day that I was ovulating. So my body was in the perfect condition to receive, I guess, to get pregnant, because it was so relaxed and just energy running through it. That is my update right now. I will touch base with you guys later. I wanted to document this. I don't know how I'm going to put this together yet. And it's not, it's so weird to it's hard to describe these things, because it's not like, somebody walked in and was like, yo, I'm an angel, like I have a message for you, It was a knowing and a presence that came into the room. Everything went gold. I saw a bunch of geometric shapes, and one of the shapes went into this orb, and I was like, what are you? And it said an angel, and basically told me that I was going to get pregnant. And that was it. That was the message. And of course, I'm sitting there in shock, like, okay, you know, like I'm not planning on it, so whatever. I highly, I didn't doubt it, but at the same time, I was very much taken back by it. I was very surprised because that was unexpected. So I just kind of like shrugged it off and let it go, and, you know, I'm married, whatever. So it was kind of like one of those things of, well, if it happens, it happens, you know, I'm not gonna freak out about it. So fast forward to a couple weeks later, I work at an energy, like a spiritual wellness center on the weekends, and during the week after my corporate 9 to 5, and I do energy work, and I work with other, you know, psychics and energy workers and stuff. And one of them came up to me and she's like, hey, like, I had a vision that you're gonna get pregnant. And I was like, oh shoot, like, okay. Yeah, and at this point, like, she didn't know anything of my vision or my visiting from the angel. She had no idea. I did not tell. Honestly, I think this is the first time I'm telling about that. So I was just kind of like, okay, well, this is kind of weird. It must be in my field, because if you are in tune with the energy, you can read what's in people's fields, what's coming for them and stuff like that. It's the whole thing with tarot, or, you know, energy work. Even with myself, you can get messages, you can get feelings and knowings. It's just part of it. So I was like, all right, well, I still doubted, like, you know, I'm apparently on this timeline. So I was wondering how long I was going to be on this timeline, or if I would stay on it, because I could shift if I, you know, I guess to say wanted to, but I could shift some way, somehow. So I kept going about, and a couple days later, I ended up having a dream that I was pregnant and that my cousin was pregnant also. And which, crazy enough, she ended up getting pregnant too at the same time. And we were actually due a few weeks apart. So that's pretty crazy. Yes, Brooke, if you're watching this video, I had a dream you were pregnant. We were pregnant together. So apparently I was still on this timeline. A couple days after that, I got a message from another psychic worker that I knew, and they had told me, they're like, hey, I had a dream and you were pregnant in it. And I'm like, okay. So apparently this is a thing, and I still shrugged it off because I was in such shock that all this was going on. And just a little background knowledge, I was not on birth control or anything like that. I wasn't trying to play it safe. Sometimes some months were off, some were like fine, or sometimes I would go like a whole month and have a period like the entire time. So, and I had gone, you know, years, I say years, I had gone a couple years off of birth control and not had a problem not getting pregnant. So I figured that I was going to struggle when the time came that I wanted to. But apparently that is not the case, and I know differently now. But so yeah, I just kept going, and, you know, December came, time of the month came, and so I was like, well, I'm not pregnant. So apparently I shifted. Well, then January hit, and I started noticing several symptoms. I started to, now what I know is pregnancy symptoms, but I, you know, never experienced pregnancy before. I didn't research it, but I wasn't nauseous. But I had smell aversions, like I couldn't smell certain foods without getting sick. And I thought it was really weird because people at work would have like fast food, and meat in particular. I would smell meat and I would just get so nauseous. And I was like, what the heck? I must not, you know, that hamburger must be awful. It was just, I couldn't be around people who ate fast food in the workplace. So I was like, okay, this is really, really weird. So my smell increased. I actually started having this really weird body odor. I started smelling horrible after a workout. I was just like, I cannot believe, like, this is embarrassing. Now I know it was hormones. And I also had fatigue really bad. I had fatigue, like, to the point, and that's what actually made me go and take a test, was the fact that I was about 2 days late on my period when I was supposed to get it in January, and I just felt weird. I had felt very, very tired, and it was an abnormal tired. I had felt like this fluttering feeling in my uterus. It felt really like a tingly, like it was just so freaking weird. And my hips started to actually ache, and now I do have like achy hips because, like, #root chakra problems. But this was different. This was like, it was like a pulling, and I was like, wow, like, what the hell is going on with my body? I am very much in tune with my body, and the way that it was acting was just so out of the normal that it did actually scare me, and I just did not feel in control of myself and my body and the energy that was, like, in it. And so obviously I know now, because it was I can't remember what day it was. It was some day after work, and I was going to the gym, and I'm like, I just, like, something just feels wrong. I'm like, I don't know, like, I'm overly emotional, I'm tired, I feel weird, like, all this stuff is happening, and I'm like, I need to take a test. So I bought a pregnancy test, and honestly, I doubted it. I'm like, I'm just gonna rule this out, because if I am pregnant, and, like, I still, you know, I drink on weekends, I don't, you know, I'm healthy for the most part, but I could be better. If I had known I was pregnant, I would have been way better. And so I took the test at the gym, and I, like, took it, put it down, and I just started to change, and I'm like, well, this is gonna say, you know, I'm just ruling it out, so it's gonna give me a peace of mind, right? Lo and behold, the damn thing said pregnant. And so I'm like, holy shit. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take another one. So I took another one, and it said pregnant. And so I was in such shock that I, like, packed up my gym stuff, and I just went home. I could not tell, like, I was in disbelief, and I should have known that, you know, with all the signs, this was what was gonna happen. And I still tried to be, I just did not want to accept it. And I'm an energy worker. I work with this stuff all the time, and I tell people messages all the time, and now I know what they must feel like. They're like, what the hell, this girl is just telling me this BS. And when you're sitting there, like, saying these things to these people, you're like, this is not BS, like, you know, you're, like, telling how it is. And I feel like that's what everyone did to me, and I was just like, whatever, you know. So, sweet little Shaggy. I was still in shock with all of this. It took me a couple days to actually process it, but obviously, like, I downloaded an app. I forgot what it was called. I think it was like Flow or something, and then I plugged in my last date of my period, and then it kind of calculated roughly when it thought that I had gotten pregnant, and how far along I was. So, and all this was still so new to me. I tried to look everything up to try to figure this out, but approximately it was about 4 weeks when I found out that I was pregnant. And so next day, called the doctor, all that stuff like that, but they could not get me in until, like, when I was 13 weeks. So that freaked me out. I'm continuing on the pregnancy vlogs. I'm about 6 weeks, I think, this week. Of course, I don't go to the doctor until the 8th of February, unfortunately. But I'm just, like, I'm kind of a nervous wreck. It's really nerve-wracking. I feel my body going through changes. It's kind of what initiated me to take the test.
besides missing my period, but I've had irregular periods like ever since getting off birth control. So, but there was just something that told me to take a test, and it's just like, there's days where I'm like, I'm way further along than, you know, 6 weeks, because I feel just like very bloated and very like my stomach is really hard, and I just feel crampy, and my uterus is like really tingly. Sorry if that's too much information, but and I can just like, I feel all the like hormonal shifts in my body. When you're really in tune with your body, when you work with Reiki, like, you know your body very well. You have to, because the energy is in it. It's moving through it, and it, you know, your body is the connection point for the universe. So it's kind of like, I'm like up and down. I'm really scared. Like, I'm like increasing my food. I'm taking prenatals now. I'm still working out, but I'm not like doing anything strenuous. Like, I don't know, like, I don't feel like I don't know, pushing the limits per se. So I'm just like, am I supposed to be feeling sick? Am I supposed to, like, you know, I'm not having that bad of like, I don't want to say morning sickness, but it's more so like I taste like this horrible garlicky taste in my mouth. And my sweat smells awful. And it's just like, and I can't smell cooked food. Like, cooked food makes me want to vomit, and it's more so like fatty cooked food. Like if I just did like vegetables or something, it'd be fine, I think. But I don't know. I'm just like, I'm probably gonna take another pregnancy test, because I mean, I've taken like 4 already. I'm just in, some days I feel pregnant, some days I don't. Like this morning I woke up, my stomach was really flat. Like I didn't have a little pudge, like a little bump. And I'm just like, what the F? Like, it's gotta be the hormones. Just like a nervous wreck. And it's hard because you can't really talk to anybody about it, because nobody knows that you're pregnant. This is a really like scary, emotional like time right now. And I didn't realize, like, I knew I would be anxious, but I didn't realize like how anxious I would be. So I'm gonna do what I do best during this time. I'm gonna go upstairs, I'm gonna meditate, and I'll probably do some tarot readings before I start my work today, just to kind of seek some clarity. But the message I keep getting is, you know, our bodies are designed for this. You know, if it does go wrong for some reason, it's really not too much of like in my control. It's, you know, something like chromosomal or genetically, like with the baby, just didn't work out right. You just want to do everything right, but I just keep getting the message that just let my body take over and just don't worry about it. Just trust. So that's what I'm trying to do right now.
I was freaked out by that. Just like my stress levels just shot up. I'm like, I was expecting to get in like within a week or 2, and I have to wait like until I'm 13 weeks. Like, that scared the shit out of me. Obviously, I did a bunch of research, tried to do what I thought was best with my health, with like, you know, exercise. I cut back. I started eating right. Obviously, you don't drink, like trying to do all the right things, right? But I think my anxiety was just too much to handle. I know during this time too that the hormones, that you're very, very not yourself. And I wish that somebody would have told me this, or I wish that I had done more research, but I did not feel like myself. My body was already changing crazy. I started getting like retaining a bunch of water. I was getting really swollen and puffy, and my blood flow increased quite a bit, because I noticed like when I would walk, I would get really red, and I would get out of breath really easily, and that just took me back. And because I am like a cardio queen, and I was like, I'm struggling to like even jog a mile. Anytime I ate anything, my stomach like bloated so fast. And it was actually crazy of how quick things had turned from finding out that I was pregnant to like, it was like a couple of days had passed and all these symptoms started to just go. So like I would eat something and it would look like I was 3 months pregnant. My cravings started to get crazy. I, for some reason, just wanted waffles. I just wanted to eat waffles all the time. So that's kind of what I did. Waffles, chocolate, cereal, like breakfast foods, really, that kind of threw me off. The stress of this being really unplanned and the stress of like, I don't know if I'm ready, you know, like we just bought a house, like we have this stress of trying to redo it, you know, finances and all that stuff. Like I just can't, I don't know how I'm gonna handle all this. And then the stress of being, you know, a new mom, like am I ready? Like I'm pretty sure that a lot of people have these fears as soon as they find out that they're pregnant, but I always thought it would be a very joyous time, a very like, yay, I'm so excited. And don't get me wrong, guys, I was excited. You know, but there was a lot of fear. There was so much fear behind this that it was too much, obviously, for me to handle. It really made the whole experience not good. But obviously I wouldn't change it for the world. So all these things, all these thoughts were happening, all this fear was coming up. It was so stressful, and I was really scared of miscarriage. I was so terrified of it. Because the doctor's appointment was so far out, I didn't know if what I was doing was right. I still had a hard time believing that I was even pregnant, despite all the symptoms and everything. So about week 7, I actually started to get really, really bad cramps. And that scared me because I knew that they were normal, but this just did not feel normal. So I called the OBGYN nurse and I'm like, hey, like I'm cramping. This just doesn't feel right. And she's like, well, are you bleeding? No. She's like, well, cramping's normal, so don't worry about it until you bleed. So I'm like, okay. So cramping kind of went away, and then it would return at certain points. And I really tried to pay attention when it would return, to see if like I was stressed out or anything like that. But I was also very, very constipated, like horribly constipated. I didn't know that was a thing either. I thought it may be that as well, which I think sometimes it might have been. But there was one night, it was over, I don't know, it was a Saturday night, and my husband was sleeping, and I was cramping so bad. I just like was down on my knees on the floor. I just let my body go. I told it, and I'm like, do what you need to do to get this to stop. And it had me doing, or it started doing these weird motions. I was on my hands and knees and I was like doing this like cat-cow circle-y thing. I don't even know what it was, but it was helping it was the only way I could get the cramps to be tolerable. And I'm pretty sure it was like contractions at the time. But I was just like, I was fully expecting, I went to the bathroom afterwards and I was like, I'm totally expecting a bunch of blood. And there was still no bleeding at this point, still no bleeding. So I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what to do. So I'd called the OBGYN again and said, hey, like this intense cramping is going on. Are you sure that this is normal? They still reassured me as long as I wasn't bleeding that I was fine. So, but there was just something in the pit of my stomach, guys, like it just wasn't fine. I knew, I was just like, this is not normal. I don't care what anybody's telling me. It was not normal. And I didn't want to believe it, but at the same time, I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to end up losing this, you know, baby. I think it was a couple of days later, I ended up having a dream that I woke up in my dream and I went to the bathroom and I saw a bunch of blood. So, and of course I woke up right after that and I was just like, oh, thank God it was just a dream. But a couple days later, like, it ended up happening. I woke up and went to the bathroom, and there was just, you know, there was not a bunch of blood, but it was like, you know, spotting. And that is, any kind of bleeding is not good when you're pregnant. It's a cause for alarm. So of course, like, I was just, everything felt so surreal again, because it was just like, I had it in my gut that this was going to happen. I had the dream, and then it just happened, and I'm just like, okay, you know, like, here we go. This is it. And so I called, you know, my doctor, and they were like, you need to come in, like, you know, right away. We need to do blood work. We need to make sure, you know, that it's, I don't know, that there were some tests that they had to do. So obviously the urgency freaked me out. I was at work whenever I did get a call back from them, because I left a message to the nurse as soon as they, like, opened. So I'm running out of work, like, almost in tears after being on the phone with the nurse that freaked me out. I go to the hospital, you know, they take my blood, and this is the first time I've actually been into the hospital since being pregnant and actually seeing somebody. So that in itself really eased my anxiety. It almost brought a sense of comfort. Because I'm like, finally, they're seeing me. Like, I will at least know. I still had in my mind that, what if I'm not pregnant? So they took my HCG levels, and, you know, came back, and they were pretty, like, low, but they were like, well, we don't have anything to measure it against. So we need you to come back in, you know, tomorrow and take another measurement, because it should be, like, going up. So I'm like, okay. Me being new, I had no idea what HCG, like, I knew it was a pregnancy hormone, but I didn't know how fast it should be going up, you know, what was normal, what wasn't. So I just am on, like, bed rest at this point. I'm not doing hardly anything but trying to just stay calm. I was trying my best not to stress myself out, because I really feel like that is what ended up pushing me over the edge. It was just the intense amount of stress. So fast forward, next day I go in, and my HCG levels are rising. So I'm like, oh, okay. Well, they're like, well, you know, that's a good sign. So we're just gonna keep monitoring your HCG and your bleeding levels. And I'm like, okay. And by this point, it was a couple days later, like, the bleeding had stopped. So I'm like, okay, like, maybe it's done. Maybe it was just a fluke, or, you know. And all during this time too, I was really, really, really trying to take it slow. I was trying to stay calm. I was trying to meditate. I was trying to fuel my body with good foods. But it was hard. It was very hard. Your hormones and your emotions at this point are just all over the place. I felt very helpless for, like, the first time in my body, of I couldn't control what it was doing. I was trying my best to basically heal whatever it was, and I could not get myself under control, my stress levels under control. My body was just reacting. A few days, I think it was about a week later, the bleeding came back, and it was, like, intense. It just would not stop. So they keep monitoring my levels, and still they were rising, but very slow, and that was a cause for alarm. I still to this day, like, have trouble understanding HCG. So I'm not very positive at this point with it rising so slow.
So it's probably way too soon to talk, but pretty sure I'm having a miscarriage. so frustrating. I can't get into the doctors to actually see anything. It's just kind of like, when you know, you know. And there's just a tiny bit of hope, but I don't really know where to go from here. There's so many emotions with this experience. I don't know how to move forward just yet. It makes me question everything I thought I wanted. I'm not sure I can do it again. I don't really know why, but this is definitely a tower moment. And for those of you who don't know what that means, it means your world basically comes shattering down. There's something that will step into your life and it will change everything, the course of it. And this is all how I am going to react. Will determine the course. Right now, it's really hard because I feel so disconnected. Right now, I feel so far from it because I'm really upset. I'm just angry right now. Everyone thinks if you're spiritual or guru, whatever, just because I do Reiki or just because I meditate or anything like that, it doesn't mean that I don't struggle. It just is how I deal with it. I can't lose myself.
So after I had gotten home from the hospital from getting, my blood drawn, and like I was just a hot mess. I contacted one of my Reiki classmates that I did Holy Fire with. She was at this point the only one who knew I was pregnant besides a couple of my friends that I had to talk to just to emotionally release what was going on. And so I was like, I need help. Can you please give me a distant Reiki session? Because she's all the way in Arizona. So we did a distant Reiki session when I got home that day, and I just remember that session. I got messages. I met the child. I saw several timelines. It was very, very intense. I even saw a second child. This kind of going a little bit off track, but it was a very intense Reiki session. And it was all based around womb healing is what we had set the intention around. What everything we did in this session was to help save the baby. Afterwards, me and her both got the same knowings, which was crazy because she's like, hey, like, did you get the gender? And I'm like, yeah, I actually got like 2 different genders. She's like, yeah, they came through. So there was actually a boy and a girl that had come through, and I'll get to this later, but the boy was the one that I was actually pregnant with, or that was coming through first. But that's neither here nor there. But at this point, I still was feeling not great about it. After the Reiki session, I pulled out my journal. I keep at my altar up here, and it's for big things. It's like for manifesting big things. It's like my year manifesting, like things like that in my life. And I started to actually journal in this book. I started to, I actually wrote a letter to my body and apologized for everything. And this is an extremely healing thing. If you're struggling with anything with your body, guys, write it a letter. If you're struggling with your health, with, like if you're struggling to get pregnant or anything like that, write your body a letter and surrender to it, and show it so much love and gratitude in the letter, and just ask it to do what you would like. So I wrote in the letter how sorry I was. How, because I was so upset at what it was doing, how the thoughts that I was thinking about it and about myself, how negative it was, how I wasn't trusting my body to do what it needed to do, and I was having so much resistance around everything. And resistance meaning not that I was like resenting getting pregnant. It was resistance as in like I had a hard time letting go of control. Letting my body do its thing. Like, and it was very hard for me. I forgave it for all the negative self-talk I had ever had upon myself, and I thanked it and gave it so much gratitude for what it does for me and allows me to be here, and the power behind this body. Anything that you could think of me letting go of negative energy based around my body and forgiving myself and trying to support my body in any way that it could to help bring this child into the world. I wrote it all down, and I still actually have the letter. I don't reread it because I don't want to re-invoke those feelings, but I did actually write down several beliefs and negative self-talk that I had upon that I was having with myself, and some normal ones, because I don't have the best body image either, guys. I have bad days, I have good days. So I wrote down a bunch of just beliefs that I was holding about myself and in my relationship to my body, and I burned them, symbolizing that I was letting go of those beliefs so then I could further heal. So I did all that. I definitely felt better, but it was too late. I eventually ended up actually going to the emergency room a few days later because I had freaked myself out because I kept researching, stuff with pregnancy causing bleeding, and I found ectopic pregnancy. I think it's called an ectopic pregnancy. And I convinced myself I had one. I was having a sharp pain in like the side of like where your tube actually is, and I was remembering like, this is very weird, this thing, there's something there that was not there before any of this happened. So I was getting scared that this was an ectopic pregnancy, because combined with that, my HCG levels were still rising but very slowly, which is another symptom of an ectopic pregnancy. And as soon as I, found out what it was, which if you don't know what an ectopic pregnancy, I'll go ahead and say it or put a link or something below. It's when you're pregnant and it shows on the pregnancy test, it shows like, you think you're pregnant, but the actual fetus or the egg it never reached your uterus. It actually got stuck in the tube somehow, some way, from either an obstruction or whatnot, but it will start developing in the tube, but it won't get very far, obviously, because it needs the uterus. And I think I'm saying this right, but it's basically the baby developing outside of the uterus, which can cause death. So I freaked out. I went straight to the emergency room. My husband drove me. So we spent all freaking like 8 hours in the emergency room. Only to, you know, find out that I do not have an ectopic pregnancy. They even, you know, they did the vaginal ultrasound, and guess what? They could not even find a baby in there. I was like, okay, what the F is going on? I was so disheartened that I was already struggling to accept the fact that I was pregnant, but everything was pointing that I was, but nobody could actually find the baby. I was having this sharp pain in my freaking tube, and nobody could even see it there. I was just like, I didn't know what to think. I was so defeated. I was so angry. I was just like, all that I wanted was an answer. I just remember thinking at that point, like, I just want a freaking answer forward at this point. I don't care if if we make it through this, awesome. If we don't, at least I know, because that was the worst thing, was not knowing. And waiting. So you're stuck. And there's nothing that you can really do. And I think that was the worst feeling in this whole situation, was just being helpless. Trying to just let my body do its thing, and I couldn't do anything about it. That's the worst feeling. After I'd gotten home from the ER visit and finding out, I'm not having an ectopic pregnancy, but they pretty much told me, the emergency room doctor pretty much told me, he's like, we don't know why these things happen, but sometimes they just do. And he's just like, he basically gave me this really, really nice, thoughtful speech of, we're sorry, but most likely you're gonna have a miscarriage. But at the same time, I still was holding a little bit of hope. There's still that little slight chance of hope that you're it could still pull through. Nobody has told me yet that this is not a thing, nobody's told me that it is a sure thing that I'm gonna have a miscarriage. So there was a tiny bit of hope, even though I still internally knew this is not gonna end well. I went to the hospital the next day to get my HCG levels measured again, and then they started dropping. This was the first time they started dropping since I'd gotten my levels. Before then, I just got off the phone with the hospital. My HCG levels are dropping, so that pretty much means that it's not going to be a successful pregnancy. I haven't miscarried yet, so I have to go back on Monday and do more labs to make sure my levels are still dropping, and basically probably be monitored until it hits 0 and that everything clears from my body. I was a little hopeful, but in my gut, I knew this just wasn't in the cards for me, and that's okay. I've kind of already accepted it, because I don't sugarcoat shit. Nobody wants to, feel like it was their fault. I really am trying not to feel like I'm responsible for it. I'm trying not to be mad at my body. I learned a lot about myself. I do a lot of energy work. My body is the temple of God, and
Just like everyone else, I struggle just because, you know, I do a lot of energy work and a lot of spiritual work. It doesn't mean that everything is always perfect, and there is a reason behind this, and it just wasn't my time. I just can't lose myself. I just don't really know how to move forward. You just like are hurt and you just don't feel ready to jump in and do it again for a while. This was pretty traumatic. So I really don't know how it's going to affect me moving forward. This vlog, however I decide to put this together, will help somebody to know that they're not alone.
At least I have an answer now. And that brought so much relief. Even though it wasn't the answer that I wanted, it brought so much relief that I just was so happy to actually know what was going on. That I wasn't holding false hope anymore. There was a sense of me that was happy that I knew what was to come, but I wasn't happy about what was to come. So after I had, you know, my breakdown and I just kind of like accepted it, it's kind of like almost you go through a process of grievance. There was the shock factor. There was, I did have the I can't believe like this is happening factor. And like you don't want to believe it, but then like you accept it, and then like you just are ready to process it and like move on, right? So after I'd gotten the news that it was just, you know, not gonna happen, I was like, okay, well, you know, what can I expect? And they're like, well, you'll probably end up passing it within the next week or two. So I'm like, okay. They're like, if you don't pass it within like a certain amount of time, come in and we need to do, they scheduled me for a follow-up because apparently when you do have a miscarriage, you have to be monitored very closely because of the health risk. If it doesn't come out, like if the body doesn't do it on its own, you have to surgically get it removed, and that could be a whole nother thing. And so that kind of raised some concern, because my body had held on to this thing for a long time and had fought with the HCG levels for a long time, just slowly rising. It was like I got the feeling my body wanted this thing to, like, now that I think about it, it just makes sense. Your body is made to create. It wants to create. So it was doing any and everything that it could to create. And it was just conflicting energy with that, my mind and the stress that I was having that was counteracting it. So I was like, all right, well, I'm just really gonna hope that my body does it on its own and I don't have to go through even more trauma per se. So fast forward to Valentine's Day. I started to, you know, as soon as I figured out I wasn't gonna have the baby, I was like, I've got to do what I can do to return the best way that I know how to normal life, because I was like, this is what, like, I don't know how many weeks of this intenseness, weeks of not knowing. I think I was about like 11 or 12 weeks when that I actually, like, all this happened from week like 6 to week like 12 when I actually started bleeding to when I finally lost the baby. But so I had to actually do what I could to feel normal again. My hormones were still whack. I was in a body I didn't recognize. My relationship with my body was shit. I was in a very, very, very dark place. Mentally, emotionally, physically. This was the second time that I had ever cursed God. And that takes a lot. For me to do that. Just fell to my knees. Damn it. Fell to my knees and I just started screaming. Why? What did I do? Why did this happen? Just doesn't make sense. Why would you give me a life and then take it? Why would you make me go through all of the emotions in this struggle? And I was so angry because I knew this was going to be a cycle. I was stuck in a cycle. I was so mad. I didn't know how to break it. I didn't know how to get out of the cycle. Because I knew that if I ever wanted to get pregnant again, I had to fix this. I had to break the cycle. It was very, very dark. I had to do whatever I could to try and pull myself from this place. I couldn't just stay there. It was not going to be good if I stayed there. I knew better than to allow myself to stay there long. But I also knew I had to give myself the space and the grace and the compassion while I was in this spot. That's what I did. I was not happy. I was pissed. I was sad. But I also knew that I was loved, that I was taken care of. Even though I cursed, I knew it was for a reason. And I knew that the reason it had happened was for my best interest. And it would put me on a higher path in life because it gave me so much wisdom and perspective and experience, and it totally changed the way that I saw my body and appreciate it for what it did and can do without my conscious thought. I was not in control. I have so much illusion for how much control I think I have over my body. It allows me to have control. We'll just say that. If it wanted to take control, it would. So, anyway, so moving on, it was Valentine's Day, and I love Zumba, I love dance, and I had so much sacral chakra healing to do. Actually, guys, I'm gonna make this into like a 2 parts. I'm gonna go cut it off here because I think I'm already like in 30 minutes. This is crazy. I'm gonna cut it off here, and then I'm gonna start a new video and talk about the other half of the shit show that's gonna go down. So anyway, hopefully at least this part helps some people. I know it's a lot of woo-woo for most people's taste probably, but if you're struggling anything with your body, Western medicine does have a place, but please look into energy work. Please do it. If this is any kind of like your sign or proof, or even if you're struggling getting pregnant, please look into womb work with energy work. It can help change your life. Anyway, so if you guys want to hear the rest of the story, I'll link it in the bottom, the description below. So anyway, if you made it this far, hopefully this helped you relate. If you're going through something similar, hopefully you got something out of this. If not, maybe you just have a better understanding about me and or just pregnancy and miscarriage in general. But I just want to emphasize that it is a trauma, despite how you feel. A miscarriage is a trauma to the body. It has to heal from it. Mentally, emotionally, and physically. You have to heal from it. Thanks, guys. I will see you in the next one.